Laughed at his funny jokes for years until I read a book that made me realize I wasn't just sensitive. I was being emotionally abused by the man I thought loved me but slowly broke me down piece by piece instead. I'd laugh when he made those jokes. Not that they were funny, but because I didn't know I could do anything else. Like, what else was I going to do? Say stop and have him call me sensitive? Get up and leave the room and receive the silent treatment for days? Or worse, have him pull me aside afterward, all serious and quiet, and explain to me where I was wrong to get angry. So I laughed. I smiled. I even laughed back at times. And somewhere deep inside of me each time, something small inside of me withered up, like a part of me I wouldn't even notice was missing until years later. I don't know when it started. I don't have a particular memory of when things turned. It was more a slow leak. A tiny crack in the foundation that let the cold seep in, bit by bit, until one day I was just cold and didn't know why. We were together 6 years, married 4, and I would have sworn we had a playful relationship. That was what I used to call it. Playful. He teased me, and I teased him. Except he never flinched when I did. He never shot me a look of embarrassment or pain. But I shot him plenty. I just didn't realize that was what I was feeling, hurt, because I always assumed hurt would always be after shouting, or slamming doors, or fists, maybe. But his voice was always calm, soothing, teasing. And so I blamed myself for the knots in my stomach, as if it were a me problem. As if I was too serious or too emotional or too not cool enough to keep up with his sense of humor. I remember one night, God, it sounds so silly now, but it bothered me. We were having dinner with friends, and I couldn't remember the name of some actor. He tells me, "Oh come on, you can't, babe, your brain can't be your best thing anyway." And everyone had a laugh. So did I. But I was killing myself on the inside. It was like this bolt of lightning flash of embarrassment, and then shame and then guilt, all this all entangled up yucky stuff that I couldn't untangle. Because I wanted to be the cool wife. The one who could handle a joke. The one who giggled and complied. But I remember the way his hand remained on my knee afterwards, menacingly, like, "Good girl, you didn't make a scene." That's the way it used to be. As if I were being trained. Conditioned. Keep things casual. Smile. Don't ruin the mood. I didn't even know that I was disappearing. I just thought I was practicing to be a better girlfriend. And I really labored at believing that it was the norm. You know? Like, that's just the way he shows love. It's his love language. He teases because he feels comfortable with me. God, I wish someone had told me earlier why it is so fucked up that we learn to decode cruelty as love simply because it comes on the face of someone you love with a smirk instead of a slap. The very first time I ever actually stopped and had, wait. This cannot be okay. I was reading a book. It wasn't even so much a book about abuse, though. It was more like a memoir. A woman talking about her marriage, and she describes this one time when her husband demeaned her weight in front of her kids, and she laughed because it was quicker than being the family dinner crasher. And I just froze. I sat on the couch, coffee becoming cold in my hands, reading that one paragraph as if I was in front of a mirror I never knew I had. I read that section over again, I suppose 6 or 7 times. I wasn't crying. Not yet. It was a kind of cold shock. Like waking up with a bruise on your leg and not knowing how you did it, but concluding that you must have gotten hit hard. That's not what took place after that. It did not just switch. I did not wake up, pick up a bag, and depart. I wish I could tell you that was the case. What actually transpired is worse because I started noticing everything. Every little comment. Every instance that he made me the joke in a conversation. Every smirk that came after something that really hurt. Waking up in a hazy house you'd deceived yourself was fog. And then I started remembering things from the past. Such as the time he made a joke about me looking better when I wore makeup. Or when he called his mom on speaker and said I had finally gotten something cooked that wasn't inedible. Or the time I had a panic attack and he said I was being dramatic. And suddenly, it wasn't funny anymore. It wasn't flirting. It was erosion. Quiet, steady, emotional erosion. And I had let it happen. But here's the thing that still messes with me. He didn't hit me. He didn't yell at me. He didn't cheat. And whenever I'd attempt to talk to someone about it, like actually talk, I'd end up minimizing it halfway through. He's just joking, always. I'd tell them. He's sarcastic. I'm most likely just too sensitive. And worst of all, people nod. They'd agree. They'd say, "Some guys are just like that." And I'd nod and smile with them, and go home and wonder if perhaps I was being over the top. Again. And that cycle, that loop of doubt and dismissal, it's so dangerous. It keeps you trapped. It kept me trapped for years. Because I thought that if I wasn't bruised on the outside, then I must be fine. I wasn't. And I remember so clearly the moment I knew it had to stop. It wasn't a big thing. It wasn't even nasty, not when you put it next to some of the others. He walked into the kitchen one day. I was scrambling eggs and he just looked at me and said, "Don't burn them like you did last time. Or are you still trying to poison me?" And I laughed. Again. But something about that moment just snapped me. I looked at the pan, at my hands, and I had this huge, heavy, hollow feeling. I wasn't mad. I wasn't upset. I was just gone. Like whatever spark I had left inside of me had been extinguished. And that scared me worse than anything. Because I knew this wasn't about jokes or put-downs. This was about losing me. Piece by piece. Steadily. Silently. With each "just kidding," and "can't you take a joke?" And "you're overreacting again." So I stood there, spatula in one hand, egg pan hissing on the stove, and I didn't laugh that time. I didn't say anything at all. And he caught it. He looked at me for a moment, kind of puzzled, maybe even a little bit annoyed, and then said, "It was a joke. Relax." That word, loosen it, was my cue to withdraw. Smile. Nod. Wave it away. But that morning I shut off the stove, walked on into the kitchen sink, drained the eggs, and walked out. I did not slam anything. Did not shout. I just left. And I think that scared him more than anything. He followed behind me, asking why I was angry, once again saying he was only joking, that I was being weird. And I see myself staring at him, really staring, and feeling this strange remoteness. As if he was someone I knew in another life. And I told him, "I don't laugh anymore." That's it. That's literally all that I said. And the resulting silence was like nothing. He did not apologize. He didn't even try to get it. He just got defensive. Told me I was being moods, asked me if I was on my period, made this face like, "Wow, here we go again." And I could sense it, that old flip where all of a sudden I was the villain, and he was the poor guy walking on eggshells around his too sensitive wife. But this time, I wasn't having it. For the first time, I did not give in. I did not defend myself. I did not argue. I just shut off. Quietly. It wasn't strength, but it was numbness. But that numbness would go on to become something stronger. The following weeks were chaotic. I wish I could tell you I gained clarity and walked away, but the reality is I doubted myself every other day. I googled things late at night. Is emotional abuse a real thing? When jokes become a line in relationships, gaslighting indicators in marriage. And I read accounts that felt too familiar. Women who said they felt like they were disappearing. Women who wrote of smiling with their words and remaining because they thought maybe they were the issue. I would be reading those tales with a pounding heart and constricted throat, for it was like my own mind had been placed on a screen. I wasn't alone. That was more than I can express. I started writing things down, things he said at random, how they touched me, the context surrounding them. I don't even know why. Perhaps I needed proof. Maybe I no longer trusted my own memory. And reading through that notebook today, it's frightening. Page after page of these small wounds. None of them on their own mortal, but together this deep, secret wound. And finally, I couldn't make myself believe I was lying. It was there on paper. In my words. My pain. And then there was the night I tried to talk to him. I mean really talk. I sat him down after dinner, waited for him to relax, and told him that his way of speaking to me, especially when he was around other people, was insulting. I didn't attack him. I used all the "I feel" statements I could think of. I was careful. Nice. And he laughed. That laugh, I still hear it sometimes. He said to me, "You're being so dramatic. You want me to censor everything I say now? Tiptoe around you? Not a marriage. That's a hostage situation." I just sat there, blinking. Frozen again. And then he said something that shifted everything. He said to me, "This is why I don't say things to you. You always make them something and you're the victim." That was it. That's when I knew I had to leave. Because it was the first time I saw it in plain sight. He needed me to be the issue. So he never had to confront himself. Never had to experience guilt or shame or regret. If I was too sensitive, then he could continue to be cruel and label it comedy. If I was the problem, then he got to stay perfect. And I knew I'd never win. I was never ever going to be safe. I could twist myself into 1,000 variations of chill wife or laugh out loud wife or hush wife, and none of them would ever be enough. Because the abuse wasn't about me, it was about control. About power. About staying small enough so he always felt big. I did not leave that evening. But I made a plan. I created a secret email account. I called a therapist and made an appointment. I cried to my sister, actually told he, and sobbed for hours. I began to save money. Slowly. Carefully. Quietly. And the more I took steps, the more alive I began to feel. Not happy. Not yet, but awake. And that feeling of exhilaration, that spark, it was all worth pursuing. One night, maybe a month into this, he made a joke with some friends. Something about how I was once fun prior to marriage turned her into a buzzkill. And for the first time in my life, I didn't find anything funny. I glared at him straight in the eye and said, "That's not funny." And I swear, the whole room went silent. He was shocked. Like I'd done something wrong. And perhaps I had. But in the silence, something shifted. I wasn't the only one who saw it. People glanced over and looked, and some of them they recognized. They didn't laugh either. I saw it. And it made me strong. I didn't even know I had strength in me. He did not talk to me that night. Not in front of them. But the minute we were in the car, his hand gripped on the steering wheel and there was oppressive silence between us. I stared out of the window, counting street lamps, trying to soothe myself, already setting myself up for the storm which I knew would come. He waited until we were inside, and then it started, not yelling, not at first. Just this cold, clipped voice. "What the hell was that?" he asked. I didn't say anything. He went on. "You humiliated me. In front of our friends." I turned to him, and I said, "And I still remember the way my voice shook. You humiliated me for years. I just quit faking being okay with it." And for the first time in my life, I watched him lose his footing. For a second. His face changed. Something snapped. And then it was gone, replaced by anger, that familiar shield of denial. "You're going crazy," he growled. "You've always known I joke like that. You used to laugh. What happened?" And I wanted to scream. I woke up. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just looked at him and said, "I don't want to be laughed at anymore. I don't want to hurt to entertain other people." And the way he looked at me like I was insane, that told me everything I needed to know. He hadn't missed what he'd been doing. He just never thought I'd ever even question it. Then after that it got worse. Not louder, but quieter. Cold. Like he was tormenting me with space, with little comments laced with insincere sweetness. "Watch out for yourself," he'd say when I was cooking. "Don't want you to get abused again." Or he'd hold the door open for me and smile. "See? I can be nice, right?" As if it were all a charade, and he was reminding me that he was in control of the script. And the terrifying part? That part of me that could laugh? It longed to come back. It longed peace. It longed to smile and say, "I'm sorry, let's just forget everything," just so I couldn't handle carrying all of that silence and tension. That's how deep it cut. That's how thoroughly I'd been trained to mix up my discomfort with my guilt. But I held on. I kept going to therapy. I kept writing. I kept seeking out the people who actually allowed me to be heard. And little by little, I regained my trust in myself. That's what abuse takes away from you first, your trust in your own feelings. I had to fight to get that back. Then came the day that I left. It wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting match or a shattered plate or an ultimatum. It was a Sunday morning. He slept late. I had packed a small bag the previous night and set it in the trunk of my car. I made coffee as I always did. I stood behind the counter and looked at the man I thought I'd share my old age with, and felt nothing. No love. No hate. Only this calm finality, like reading a book after the final page. I scribbled a note. Short. True. I can't continue this anymore. I'm not well. I have to leave. That was it. I left the door and didn't look back. The next few days were the hardest I've ever had. I slept over at a friend's house. On her couch. My phone lit up with messages from him, not asking me to come back, but accusing me of being dramatic, ungrateful, and unstable. That I was wasting everything for some jokes. Jokes. And once more, I didn't reply. I couldn't. Because the moment I stepped outside, something shifted within me. It wasn't immediate relief, it was more like learning to breathe again after being underwater for so long. I'd sob out of nowhere. At the supermarket. In the shower. Folding clothes. Not because I was missing him, but because I was finally feeling all the crap that I had been pushing down. All the pain that I had been laughing through. It was coming back now, and it was ugly and raw and blinding. But it was real. And that meant I was finally healing. Therapy helped. A lot. I remember one session, I told my therapist, I feel like I let it happen. Like I laughed. I went along. Maybe it wasn't even abuse. And she stared me right in the eye and said, "You laughed to live. You didn't laugh because it was okay. You laughed because you had to." And it struck me so hard I couldn't speak for a while. Because it was true. I wasn't weak. I wasn't dumb. I was managing on whatever means I could by keeping things in check, by pretending, by being the cool wife who could take a joke. And it had cost me dearly. It's a year now. 1 year since I left. And sometimes still his voice is echoing in my ears when I get something wrong. When I misplace my keys or burn the dinner or trip out in front of someone. That voice that says, "Wow, good job. Real impressive." But now I hear it. Now I react. Now I say, "That's not funny." And it's not true. Because I get to write my own voiceover now. I get to choose the words I live by. And I choose kindness. I choose honesty. I opt for peace. Not peace with them, but with me. And maybe whoever is hearing this right now is still in it. Still giggling. Still justifying that it's not so bad. Still wondering if maybe they're just too sensitive. And if you are, then you need to hear me. You're not crazy. You're not exaggerating. It's real. Your pain is real. Your unease is real. And you don't owe anyone your silence just because they define their cruelty as a joke. You are better than that. You are worthy of safety. You are worthy of love not only when you are easy to laugh at, but when you are being human. Soft. Strong. Broken. Whole. You are worthy of someone who does not minimize you to a punchline. And if that someone must be you first, then that is alright. You can be your own safe haven. I'm learning how to be mine. It took me longer than it took her. And it was ugly. Rebuilding my life wasn't a montage. It wasn't pretty or poetic. It was slow and uneven and messy. Some mornings I woke up feeling as if I had finally escaped prison, and other mornings I'd sit in the shower for half an hour trying just to calm down. Because it happens, even when you move away from someone who hurt you, your body doesn't exactly receive the message that you are safe now. I had to relearn safety. And that didn't happen quickly. I started small. Incredibly small. I got a plant. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I hadn't gotten one for years. He used to make fun of me for killing them. I picked this little pothose with green leaves and returned it to the little guest room that I was renting out. I watered it a bit each day in the morning and watched it grow. And that stupid plant, it grew into this reminder that I could nurture something. That I wasn't broken. That I could care for life again, even if I didn't always feel alive myself. And the mirrors. I avoided mirrors for years after I was dead. I never realized until many years later that I had internalized all the small jabs that my looks were improved when I had makeup on, or that I had let myself go, or that my clothes gave me a tired look. That sort of thing, it gets under your skin. You start to perceive yourself through somebody else's twisted perspective. And when the voice is lost, the mirror self is odd. Like, who am I then? Who is this woman with worn-out eyes and the wary stance and the softness she never showed anyone? It took months of taking small steps, brushing my hair softly, choosing clothes because they felt pleasant, and not because I thought they would make me less fat, a target for me to be able to look in the mirror at last and not cringe. Occasionally, I even smiled. Not always, but sufficiently. Friends helped too. The real ones. The ones I'd lost touch with throughout my marriage because he just didn't get along with them, or because they didn't get our sense of humor. God, what a deception that was. I recall reaching out to my college friend after 2 years of not hearing from me. I simply texted, "Hey, I'm sorry I went dark. I think I wasn't well. I broke up with him." And she called me. Right away. No questions asked, no blame. She simply said, "You're safe now? I'm here." And I cried so hard that I dropped the phone. That's the thing people don't talk about how lonely emotional abuse is. How you become so convinced nobody will get it, or that you'll be hearing things, So that you invent this entire fake world around yourself just so that you can survive. And when you escape, it's like walking outside into blinding light with no skin. But then there are others. They contact you anyway. They take your hand. And gradually that glow warms up. Counseling turned more about him into more about me. About how I allowed people to come through my boundaries because I didn't realize I was permitted to have any. About how I laughed at my own hurts because I had learned that it was safer to be liked than to be truthful. About not knowing what to ask for since I was so used to being told what I was supposed to desire. I started reimagining that inner voice, the one that said, "You're too sensitive," or "You make things hard." I switched it with, "You're entitled to feel, and you owe no one your silence." It wasn't easy. I had to learn not to swallow pain like I did for so long. But I showed up anyway. Week after week. Sometimes I didn't say a word. Other times I couldn't help but cry. But I persisted. And in some way in the middle of it, I found myself again. Love that was more difficult. Not love like that. I didn't even consider dating. I couldn't. I had to learn to trust myself first. In order to know that if anyone ever made me small again, I would realize it and leave. That I would not trick myself into staying because I didn't want to be alone. So I grew love that didn't require reciprocation. Like loving the rhythm of rain without having to share it. Or loving my feet on cold wooden floors in the morning. You see, love needs no explanation. Or the way my friend's baby smiled at me with her whole face. Those moments, tiny as they were, reminded me that love could exist without pain. Without performance. Just soft, quiet presence. It took me over a year to say the word abuse out loud without flinching. And even then, I'd follow it with qualifiers. It was emotional, not physical. It wasn't all the time. He didn't mean to. Not until the day my therapist caught me and told me, "You don't need to defend your abuser just because he never hit you." And I swear it felt like something inside of me broke and healed at the same time. Because I had been defending him. Even after all of it. Even after I'd left. That deep. That's how much we are taught to defend the people who hurt us most, especially when they hurt us with a smile. Now, I still have bad days. Triggers. Moments when a remark, or a glance, or even a type of laughter makes my heart pound. But I'm learning. I'm learning to breathe through it. To ground myself. To say, that was then. This is now. I'm learning to laugh, really laugh, without the undercurrent of fear or performance. I'm learning to speak and not shrink after. I'm learning to trust my voice. To trust my no. To trust my yes. And above all, to trust me. Because I'm not too sensitive. I'm not difficult. I'm not dramatic. I'm human. And that alone is enough. If I sat across from the woman I used to be, the one who smiled through pain and laughed at jokes that sliced like tiny knives, I think I'd just grab hold of her hand first. Not say any words right away. Just remind her she wasn't alone. That someone saw. That I see. Because when you are actually there, when you're fighting to survive emotional abuse couched as jokes, you convince yourself it's not worth speaking up. That it's not ugly enough to matter. And that it is a jail. A delicate, polite jail where you keep adding more excuse streamers to the walls. I'd want her to understand that just because nobody else can perceive the bruises doesn't mean they're not real. You feel them all day as you step more lightly around someone, as you censor yourself in mid-sentence, as you rehearse your emotions before speaking. That is not love. That is fear covered up with a smile. I remember one day, maybe around 2 years into our marriage, I had gotten a haircut that I was really thrilled about. It was this loose, sloppy bob that allowed me to feel kind of free, like maybe I could start over in some way. He came home, looked at me head to toe, and said, "So we're doing the soccer mom thing now?" And I laughed. I laughed even as I felt slapped. I went into the bathroom, stared at myself in the mirror, and tried to convince myself that I was paranoid. But the thing is, he stole that happiness, something that was entirely mine, and ruined it with 5 words. And he did it so casually, so naturally, that I didn't have any idea how many other little pieces of me were already gone by then. Too many. But I didn't quite end things after that. Not after the haircut comment. Not after any of the jabs. Because if the world is instructing you that cruelty is how guys joke, and that issues are not real if they do not look like broken bones and black eyes, you lose trust in your belly. You lose trust in your hurt being true. So I stayed. I stayed because I thought it was normal. Because I thought that all people had to sacrifice parts of themselves in order for a relationship to succeed. Because I thought I was lucky to even have someone. But the real luck, the real miracle was getting out. And now I live in a tiny apartment with hodgepodge furniture and a plant that's too large for the windowsill but won't stop growing. I just take walks to get the sun on my face. I take pictures of ordinary things, my coffee in the morning, the pattering of the rain on the sidewalk, how my reflection is more tender now. I talk to myself kindly. That was a large one. It took me a long time to realize how vicious my own voice had become, how much I had adopted his. But I'd been practicing not to say that voice anymore. To replace it. Now I remind myself, you're doing your best, or it's okay to rest, or simply you're safe. Sometimes I whisper it. Sometimes I cry when I say it. But it always works. I've even started writing again. Small things. Thoughts. Memories. The kinds of quiet truths that scared me then because I didn't think they mattered. But they do. All the memories, all the feelings, all the instincts I suppressed for someone else's sake, they're all coming back to me now. And I welcome them. Even the bad ones. Especially the bad ones. I'm not angry anymore. I was once. I was mad at him, at myself, at the world that made it so easy for someone like him to get away with this. But now I'm simply sad for that me who thought being diminished was the price of being loved. And I'm proud, so amazingly proud of that me who finally had enough. If you are hearing this maybe by yourself in your car, or curled up under blankets, or awake at 2 a.m. questioning if what you are feeling is real, let me be the first to tell you, it is. Your emotions are real. Your confusion is real. Your tiredness is real. And none of them are your fault. You don't have to prove it to anyone. You don't need to have scars that are visible. Emotional abuse is real. Hurtful humor isn't humorous. You don't need to laugh to live. Breaking free isn't failure. It's waking up. It's discovering you were worth saving. And that is not weakness, that's strength most folks will never comprehend. You don't owe anyone an excuse to take peace. You don't have to wait until it's worse before you think it's bad enough. If it hurts, then that's enough. If you find yourself shrinking when you're around them, that's enough. If your joy decreases when you're in their presence, that's enough. You are enough. I am not fully healed. I still wince at certain tones. And still I cringe if I catch a glimpse of a couple laughing and wonder if one of them is shrinking behind the grin silently. For now, however, I no longer carry shame. Instead, I carry truth. And that feels lighter, softer, brighter. I still figure out how to trust, how to open, how to make love a safe and not a threatening thing. But I know now that love can't help but be scarier than walking on glass. It should be like coming home to oneself. And for the first time in a really long time, I think I have.